Is CBD good for dogs? Maybe you've been thinking about adding it to your dog's supplement routine, but you're not sure if it's actually worth it. Now, I've already shared a lot about CBD from the health standpoint in the past, and I'll link to those videos up above in the cards as well as in the description below. But in this video, I want to talk about how CBD ties into behavior and training. So if your dog has trouble focusing during training, avoiding cues that they used to know, maybe not being as quick when it comes to doing the behaviors they already know, or just seem more reactive to you, this video is gonna break it all down, so stay tuned. Before we dive in though, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa. I'm a certified professional dog trainer, an Atlas Assistance Dog certified trainer, a Catch Academy mentor, and a Canine Good Citizen evaluator, and I love helping dog guardians and handlers better understand how to train using humane science-based methods. That said, just a quick disclaimer, this is not a replacement for advice from your dog's veterinarian. If you're unsure about any new supplements or just changing up anything in your dog's routine, always consult with your veterinarian. And my other disclaimer is that if your dog has any severe behavioral issues, I recommend consulting a vet behaviorist who is able to prescribe medications as well and kind of address some more severe issues. But in this video, I'm going to be talking from a general dog training standpoint and what I've seen in my work as a professional dog trainer. So first, let's talk about how health impacts behavior, because I think a lot of people are not familiar with how intertwined health and behavior are. I always like to start with this analogy. So let's say you're driving home from work and you've had a really long day. You had a bad day at work where your boss yelled at you, you have a migraine, and you're stuck at this red light. And as soon as the light turns green, you're about to make it, but then someone cuts you off and goes ahead of you. You might feel really upset because you've already had a bad day, and you might even lose it. You might slam on your steering wheel, you might flip them off, but maybe on a normal day, you would just sigh and kind of wish them well and move on with your day. You could have the same exact situation happen, but have completely different reactions based on how you're feeling internally, as well as how stressful of a day you've already had. Behavior is information that your dog is providing to you. And so dogs are no different. The only difference though is that they can't speak to us in a language and tell us verbally what they're feeling internally, but they do speak to us using their body language. So I'm gonna go over a few different examples of what I mean by that. First, let's talk about pain. Pain can have a massive impact on your dog's behavior. And of course, having an official diagnosed injury counts as pain, but a lot of times, some of the more subtle signs of pain go unnoticed. Honestly, even for humans as well, if you can't see it in an x-ray, sometimes your doctor will kind of brush it off, but that's for humans where you can actually tell your doctor you're feeling sore. For dogs, they can't tell us, right? So especially for dogs, if you can't see it in an x-ray or if they can't diagnose something, it may go unnoticed. Your dog could be sore from sleeping the wrong way, or maybe not getting enough sleep, or maybe you took them on a really long walk and they're sore because they had a lot of exercise the day before. Or maybe they're starting to show early signs of arthritis that maybe the vet didn't catch yet. So here are some more subtle behavioral shifts that you might see in your dog if they're experiencing either chronic or acute mild to moderate pain. So first is what we call latency. So how quickly do they do the behavior after you cue them? Of course, there could be distractions and other things around, but if your dog normally sits pretty quickly when you say sit, and now they're taking kind of a long time, or they offer different behaviors instead, that might mean that they're experiencing pain when they do the movement going from standing to sit. Now, once again, I do want to mention that there could be other causes for this, like anxiety and things like that. So you do always want to look at the whole picture. Another sign is avoidance, like if you ask them to sit on a slippery surface and they just don't do anything, or they look at you like they don't know what that means, that could be a sign of either pain or they just don't want to do it on that slippery surface. I've seen people try to get their dog to sit when it's snowing outside. Some dogs don't like the feeling of the cold on their butt. So yes, there are other reasons, other than pain, but it's a sign that maybe there's something more to look into. And then finally, modification. They offer a different behavior than the one that you initially cued. So with my dog Ziggy, when he first started having some more moderate arthritis pain, when I asked him to sit, instead of sitting, he would offer a spin instead, because that's less pressure on the joints. And so that's just an example of how a dog can kind of tell you that they're experiencing some level of pain. It's important not to label this as quote unquote disobedience, because this is actually just discomfort. And in fact, most, I would say like pretty much everything is some level of discomfort emotionally or physically. So I personally don't like to really use the word disobedient anyway, especially if they're experiencing pain. That's definitely not them being disobedient. That's them trying to avoid feeling discomfort and or pain. It's like if you're in a group fitness class and they ask you to do a squat and you just pulled your hamstring, you're probably not going to do that exercise, or maybe you do one just because of the social pressure from the group class and then you're like, ow, and then you start doing something else. And so just keep that in mind. Some other things you might notice if your dog is experiencing some level of pain are things like twitching in the back when you try to touch their mid to lower back or between their shoulders. Something called a head flip. So if you're like touching their butt and you're massaging it and they quickly kind of like whip their head around, and they don't even have to necessarily like, yes, if you do it too intensely, they could nip or bite. But a lot of times, like if you have a solid relationship with your dog and you're not pushing it too far, they might do a quick head flip and like lick your hand excessively. And the more intense they lick your hand, that's probably the more discomfort they're experiencing. And then of course, just excessive licking, even if without the head flip, if they're just licking your hand a lot while you're petting them. And it's not, there's kind of a difference between like a more calm licking and then there's like an intense licking, like they're trying to get you off of them. And of course, if they're biting you, that's far past the point of discomfort. They're letting you know to stop doing that. Now, going back to CBD. So I really like CBD for pain because it has anti-inflammatory properties that can help with this discomfort by supporting the endocannabinoid system. This is the body's internal balancing system that helps regulate pain, digestion, mood, and more. When dogs feel better physically, it almost always improves their behavior too. So next, let's talk about anxiety. CBD can also help dogs who are anxious. But I do want to be clear, like I said in the very beginning of this video, CBD is not a replacement for anxiety medication. Just a side note, if you are going to go the prescription medication route, I always recommend reaching out to a veterinary behaviorist over a standard vet. The analogy I like to use is going to your psychiatrist versus your general practitioner or your family doctor. Your family doctor is going to be very generalized. They can help you with a lot of different things versus a psychiatrist is specialized in medication. So the same thing, a veterinary behaviorist is kind of like a psychiatrist, but for your dog, and they can prescribe medications and they're specialized in that aspect of medicine. That said, CBD is a great option for mild to moderate anxiety, or at least to test out as a first step before you try medication. It can also help with more situational anxiety. So if your dog is fine most of the time, other than when you take him to the groomers or when you travel or when you have a house guest over, CBD can also kind of be that situational supplement that you use for those specific instances. So I want to talk a little bit about how anxiety and behavior are tied. I think a lot of us are very clear when it comes to like a dog who has its tail tucked and is avoiding a person, cowering in the corner type situation. But there are some other signs that maybe people might tie mistakenly to something like disobedience or quote unquote being stubborn. First, when a dog is experiencing anxiety, and people too, your digestion slows down, meaning you have less of an appetite. So when dogs are turning down treats, when they normally take treats at home, that can be a sign of stress going up. Another big one that can be affected is potty training. This is because just like us, back in the day, anxiety served the purpose of being able to get away from predators or danger in general. And so when you are being chased by a lion or a predator, and same with our dogs, you want all of that energy to go towards being able to run. So non-essential functions start to kind of shut down when your anxiety increases. And so that's why when you have severe anxiety, bladder control goes away. Think about people who accidentally pee on a roller coaster. It's not that they aren't potty trained, but it's usually because it scared them so much that they peed. Tissue repair and learning is also shut down. And then of course, the more anxious they are, the more their digestion slows down, which is why your dog may start to turn down treats when they get more anxious. If they are chronically anxious, then hobbies may start to decrease, like chewing, ripping, playing, training. Those are kind of like non-essentials. So if your dog is experiencing chronic anxiety, slowly that drive to do some of the more fun things will decrease. That's why there's so many times where people bring home a dog from the shelter that is shut down, and they're like, oh, he's so well behaved. And then, a month later, they start destroying everything. A lot of times it's because they're starting to get more comfortable. So they're more comfortable to do the hobbies that they like, which are chewing. Ultimately, I just want you to know that a stressed dog is not a dog that is able to learn most efficiently. One other thing I want to point out too is the difference between eustress and distress, because a lot of people get confused about this. Like, oh, my dog won't eat treats when they see a dog across the street, but they're not scared. They're really, really excited. But that's because of something called eustress. So I like to give the analogy when it comes to eustress, someone meeting their favorite celebrity. Another example would be going to like a haunted house. You are paying money to go to a haunted house. I mean, I wouldn't, but people do because they want to experience that eustress. That said, physiologically, eustress and distress do the same thing. So your heart rate increases. If you've ever met your favorite celebrity, like a long time ago, many moons ago, I met Selena Gomez and I wanted to tell her how much I loved Wizards of Waverly Place, but I was too nervous and I ended up just smiling for the picture really nervously and then leaving. That's an example of eustress. Ultimately, whether it's eustress or distress, it doesn't really matter. Learning shuts down and your dog may forget how to do certain behaviors that are more complex or more challenging. This is why I love CBD as a supplement, because it can really help lower that anxiety baseline so your dog's nervous system can finally start to chill. When they're more chill, that means they'll be more receptive to training, more willing to eat so you can use food more strategically during your training sessions, and less likely to react to triggers, or even if they still were to react, they're more likely to be able to engage in training that will help with that counter conditioning and desensitization to various triggers. Again though, CBD is not a cure-all. You still need to do the training and the counter conditioning, but it can take the edge off so your training actually has a chance to work. Now, this next one is going to be kind of tied into anxiety, which is digestion. We talked about how anxiety can affect digestion, but I put this as its own separate category because there's dogs that don't have anxiety that have GI issues. There's a lot of science that shows that CBD may support digestion, which also does affect behavior. If you've ever felt nauseous or just not well, you'll know that it's harder to focus when it comes to doing any sort of activity that requires brain power or learning ability. Same with our dogs. If they're having GI issues or digestion issues, not only does it make it harder to use treats during training, but it also makes it harder for them to focus. By reducing gut inflammation and calming nerves, CBD can help restore balance. And that means we can get back to reinforcing those behaviors that we do want and back to having them focus more on training. What about travel though? I really like using CBD situationally for travel, whether you're flying with your service dog for the first time, or you're flying with a pet in a carrier, or maybe you're just taking a long road trip. CBD can be an excellent supplement to add in. Either way though, I do recommend testing it out beforehand so you can better understand what dosage works for them and how long it takes to kick in before your travel. Before we close out this video, I do want to touch on something that I did touch on the other two videos in more detail, but quality of your CBD definitely matters. Not all CBD is created equal and the industry is not regulated. I actually used to think that CBD was a scam because I bought mine off Amazon, but it ends up that Amazon can't even legally sell full spectrum CBD. Once again, I talk about that more in the other video. I won't get into it too much here, but when I finally tried premium third-party tested CBD, I definitely noticed a huge difference in my dogs as well as the dogs that I've worked with. It also makes a difference in how you give it to them. So ideally you give it to them with minimal food on an empty stomach. In fact, ideally it's on a completely empty stomach, but some dogs don't like the flavor of it, so you may have to mix with a small bit of peanut butter or, add it into a treat. But the less food there is, the more likely the CBD will be absorbed, which means the CBD is more likely to actually work. This is what I recommend looking for when it comes to a high quality CBD. Just a quick rundown. The first thing you want to look for is that it's third party tested. Look for the COA, also known as the Certificate of Analysis. You want it to be full spectrum so that it has that entourage effect. You want less than 0.3% THC so that your dog doesn't get high. We're not trying to get them high. That's not good for them. And last but not least, you want your CBD to come from a plant that is free of heavy metals and pesticides. Finally, I do want to mention that the dosing on the bottle is typically a great place to start, but some dogs will do great with that dosing. I found with other dogs, sometimes adding even a little bit more can really help. So mess around with the dosing as well as testing it on as empty of a stomach as you can. And that way you can see, what the best dosing and timing is to administer their dose of CBD. Now, there are a lot of really amazing CBD brands out there, as well as a lot of trashy CBD brands out there. But if you look for those things that I just mentioned, that's an indicator that it's going to be a high quality CBD. The brand that I personally use and recommend is Petals and Tails. I love that it's woman owned, and they also sell CBD peanut butter pre-made because it makes it really easy to just put on a lick mat or put in a popsicle or whatever and have your dog lick it off the lick mat, because licking is also shown to activate their parasympathetic nervous system, also known as their rest and digest. They also have a CBD paw balm, which is great for itchy paws, and an after bath spray that is lavender smelling and it smells great. I'm an affiliate for Petals and Tails CBD, so if you decide to try them out, you can use my code LISA15 for 15% off your first purchase. I'll also link to them below in the description. All right, so closing out, just a quick recap. While CBD isn't a magic tool, it can be an amazing supplement to add to your dog's routine. When your dog feels better physically and emotionally, you'll find it much easier to train. If you like this video, be sure to give it a little positive reinforcement by giving it a thumbs up, and it also helps out the YouTube algorithm as well. Subscribe if you want more videos like this, and also tap that notification bell to be notified every time I post a new video. All right, that's it for today, everyone, and I will see you in the next video.